Ya compartí el link, Saúl, y voy a cerrar acá. It's 4:01. I'm going to unmute. And I'm going to share. So we're starting to record and we are live on YouTube, as far as I know. Saúl, can you confirm that we are actually live streaming? I sent you the link, but I don't know if I sent you the right link.
Pues sí.
Okay, good. So for those that are signing in, please check your instructions in the screen. For your language preferences, please select your interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen and select the language of your preference and make sure you also mute your original audio. We're just waiting one more minute because everybody's joining in at this point. For those that just sign in, please make sure you select the language of your preference by selecting your interpretation icon. And make sure you mute your original audio so you don't hear both languages at the same time. We're going to start in just one more minute. Make sure you get your coffee. Oh, this is not a coffee break. It's a science talk. You can still bring your coffee. Yeah, I know Kelly has her own. Should we go ahead and start? I think we should. People can start joining in as we move on and introduce our speakers today. So good afternoon, everyone. For those just joining in, this is our first event of the year, Science Talk, a very rich one. For those that are just signing in, make sure you select the language of your preference. Make sure you mute your original audio so you can hear in either English or Spanish. Today's event is a science talk by the Permanent Forum of Binational Waters, and I am hosting the event today with great speakers. The topic, how citizen participation supports water sustainability. We're going to talk a lot about what citizen science is, which equals to research for all and learning for all in this process. I'm going to move along Okay. So if it's okay by all of you, I'm going to introduce our speakers for today. First, I want to say thank you to our donors, our sponsors of the Permanent Fund of Binational Waters. Of course, to the Arizona Water Resources Research Center, to California Institute of Water Resources, Texas Water Resources Institute, Texas Commission of Environmental Quality, and North American Development Bank. Thank you, as always, for your support for these live events. And I'm going to start introducing our first speaker today, Kelly Albus. She is a research scientist at Texas A&M University, Texas Water Resources Institute, and she's also a fellow with the Meadows Center for Water and Environment. She is an environmental scientist and educator whose research focuses on the nexus between the environment and people, uncovering new tools and insights into how communities connect with their natural spaces. In her work with diverse groups, citizen science emerged as a major pillar in Albus' career with its inclusive tools that blend environmental education and data collection while also measuring impacts over time and space, which makes research more sustainable also. Currently, she's a research scientist with Texas A&M AgriLife, and she works closely with the Texas Dream Team Citizen Science Program and serves as project director of the new optical brightener Tampling Citizen Science Project. Dr. Alba's latest work with the National Geographic Society is focused on using citizen science and geographic information systems to provide impactful opportunities for diverse groups to participate in water quality management through monitoring and nature-based solutions. So looking forward to hear from you, Kelly. Thank you for being with us today. Next, we have Eric Velasquez. He has a master's in resource economics and PhD student of the University of Bonn, Germany. He joined the Permanent Fund of Binational Waters in 2023, and he takes the role of leading the projects in Tijuana River watershed, which is a binational watershed. His diverse international experience encompasses research assistance at VU Amsterdam, consulting for the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, and at the United Nations Water Decade Program on Capacity Development. He is a very dedicated environmental policy researcher. Eric focuses on water governance at the transboundary level. He holds a master's degree in resource economics from the University of Bonn in Germany. I just translated German into English, very bad. And he's currently pursuing his PhD in environmental governance. Thank you, Eric, for being here this afternoon. Also, we have Alma Huerta Vergara. She is a biologist with a master's and PhD in sustainable sciences from UNAM and a postdoc at the Geology Institute, again at UNAM. She has dedicated herself to vulnerability and adaptation to water scarcity in megacities. Currently, she works as a professor in the graduate programs of earth sciences and civil engineering at UNAM, where she teaches specialized courses in water sustainability. She's a member of the Environmental and Sustainability Committee of the Mexican Civil Engineers College, and she's involved in scientific dissemination activities in the Hydrological Observatory at the Engineering Institute of UNAM. Since January 2024, she has held the candidate level for the National Research System at CONACYT. Thank you, Alma, for being here today as well. I'll touch on this later. Jesus, thank you for being with us today. Jesus obtained his master's degree at Universidad Autónoma de Chihuahua, 2013. He's working at INIFAP, Instituto Nacional de Investigaciones Forestales, Agrícolas y Pecuarias. I am sorry, Zaira, or translator, thank you. I promise I'll slow down. As water management researcher, he is member of the International Environmental and Health Sciences Consortium since 2020 and IMGA Mexican chapter since 2020. 2012. He founded a research network entitled iNexus, Water, Environment, Food, Energy in 2021. He is a conference secretariat at MedGeo 2023 in Mexico. Currently, he is studying his PhD in environmental science and engineering at the University of Texas at El Paso. And his research is mainly focused on water resources management, water quality, climate change, soil science, and trace element biochemistry. Thank you, Jesus, for being with us today, this afternoon. And with that, we have a very diverse panel this afternoon, and we all know the kind of the limits that we have in terms of time. So we're going to go very, not very quickly, but very pointing and highlighting the main topics that we want to cover today. And I'm going to start with the first question, and I'll give you the word as with the same order that I introduce yourselves. For those in the audience, if you have questions, please make sure you post them on the chat so we can cover them at the end of the interventions. And we will go over them at the end of the session. The first question that I would like to, this is a very basic question, but it's going to get us into the context on why are we doing this? Why is this topic important, especially for today's environmental challenges? So what is citizen science, ciencia ciudadana in Spanish, and what are the benefits for research in using this methodology? And with that, having that been our first question, let's just get into the topic. And I'm going to ask Kelly to go ahead and start. Kelly, if you want me to move forward on your slides, just say so and I'll move it.
Okay, thank you so much, Rosario. And hello, everybody. I am very excited to be here to talk about citizen science today. And you can go ahead and move to the next slide, Rosario. This is just my contact information. And I'm happy to share my email at the end of this if anybody wants to continue the conversation. But citizen science is, in a nutshell, the participation of non-professionals in the process of scientific research. And this means a lot of different things. It's gained a lot of popularity recently because of technology. We are able to take really fairly accurate measurements now with something like a cell phone. And this is one of the reasons. Oh, it's asking me if I'm speaking Spanish, but can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I think Zoom thought I was speaking Spanish. But essentially, by involving people in the collection of data, this is how citizen science began, but it has really evolved to include a lot more participation impacts and also equitable access to scientific research and the results. So it's more of a community-based process now. And the evolution of citizen science has, I think, really also informed science. So we can move to the next slide. When we talk about citizen science helping with water quality management in Texas, this is a big focus of my work, specifically in our state. But this is a question that I ask at most of the presentations that I give, because I think it really gets people thinking about what it can mean when you have communities participating in something like water management. Because water, especially, as we all know, in a group like this, doesn't respect boundaries. It doesn't stay where it's supposed to. It is a shared resource for all, which means that doing research on water that we then don't share widely with all, or the conversation doesn't include diverse participants, then we aren't actually working toward a better future for water. So that's one of the benefits of involving communities through citizen science, is they're learning by doing and participating in the governance of their own water. So for Texas, especially in other places where we are talking about very diverse rainfall, water use patterns, this can be really crucial to take a regional approach and let people help guide this conversation. So we can go to the last slide for this first question. Move one more slide. Sorry. And essentially, one of the biggest parts of the citizen science is data collection still. So collecting while also educating, I think, is a really crucial part of citizen science, but it also fills critical data gaps. For example, 95% of our state is privately owned. We can't always get onto these lands to collect data that is necessary for water. But if you try going with a sixth grader who's doing his science project and you try to go onto those private lands, often that does actually work a little bit better. So being able to work with the community to fill some of these data gaps, also collecting more data than professionals alone, and it makes the research and the findings more accessible, more diverse, and it utilizes increasing aspects of technology such as geolocating pictures and also things like iNaturalist and AI, where you're able to inform the data that you collect. So one of my favorite tools is ArcGIS Online, where you're actually able to take this information, geolocate it, include the picture, and then share it widely with the public automatically. So it's a way to really involve people with more accessible data than normally what you would collect with research. So in a nutshell, I feel like that's some of the big benefits of citizen science. So I will stop there.
Thank you, Kelly. For some reason, my computer. Okay. Now we're gonna go with Eric. Eric, the same question for you. I mean, apart from what Kelly just, said very, very clearly, what would you add to this?
Yeah, there's I mean, I think Kelly covered pretty well. Just give a starting point. And I don't want to spend too much time on the definition, but there's another, I think, previous question, at least for me, when I was working on this specific project that I will use as an example, is that there's a bit of a discussion between citizen science from a normative perspective and from a methodological perspective. So there are a lot of benefits, at least theoretically, of involving the community and the process of getting data, right? You can raise awareness of different issues. You can improve the ownership of the people. You can bring democratization, and the research had the same problem asking me what language I'm using. Sorry, let me just close this. Just a pop-up from Zoom now. And then there's other question from a methodological perspective. So are we trying to implement a process of citizen science because it's the right thing to do, or because we are getting an advantage in terms of gathering data? So when you're designing a project, those two questions sometimes have to wait. What are both considerations? Because there are pros and cons, as we will probably discuss during the session. And then there's also the aspect of, well, maybe you find more efficient or optimal ways to gather data, but you're losing all these normative aspects of improving or promoting certain values that you want to be. Now, I want to use this example of a project that we're working at the Permanent Forum of Binational Waters in collaboration with a local partner here in the Tijuana and San Diego coast, which is Proyecto Fronterizo. It's an NGO that has been working in environmental issues for about 30 years. And this project specifically, One Coast, One Community, it's a project that goes from sort of the south of Tijuana, the municipality, actually cuts in the next one, which is Rosarito, and goes all the way to South California, South San Diego, which is Imperial Beach in the county there. The reason why we decided, it's a big project. I don't want to spend too much time diving into the details, but one of the elements of the project is to try to look into the resilience of the coast. And then there are different activities, there are different measures, and so on. But one of the challenges that we wanted to look at is how can we measure erosion of the coast, and it's connected to water quality, etc. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So when we were designing the project, obviously there are certain challenges. As I mentioned, we have always to consider the normative elements of a project like this, because you're going to intervene in a community. But if we put that aside and we just focus on the On the technical aspects, obviously there are challenges of temporal and spatial variability, and there's about 30 miles of the coast. How do you collect data? If you have a picture of the coast, it changes a lot. There are places that you can access, others that is more challenging. Obviously, there is also interdisciplinary complexity. It's just there are some aspects of there's some technical requirements to setting up any sort of monitoring there. The binational coordination as well, because it's a binational project. So there's different languages, obviously, different ways of going things about. So there's that challenge, and obviously the engagement of the community. So if you can go to the next one. So this is one solution that we thought it would be helpful for this project, which is using a citizen monitoring system that I'm using here the generalities. I have some examples of that project in the next slides, but in this the idea is very simple. You set up stations across the border, the coast, where you can set up the phone, take pictures along specific times, and then you record and calculate a little bit the movement of the coastline. It sounds very simple, but I'll go into detail in the next intervention. All the challenges that require that. But so just a bit of my introduction on how citizen science can be used to address some of the challenges in a project like this.
Thank you, Eric. And I'm going to go with Alma. Same question. What do you see, Alma, as citizen science? What are the benefits of using this approach? You're muted. You want to go ahead and start? But you are muted. Just take the mute off.
Ya,
Okay.
perdón, es que se trabó mi mouse y no me dejaba poner el micrófono. ¿Me escuchan bien? ¿Hola? ¿Me escuchan bien? Perfecto, perfecto. Bueno, pues muchas gracias. Voy a hacer énfasis en algunos comentarios que ya bien.
Alma, would you mind muting your original audio so we don't hear? Or is that me? It might be me.
Eso es en configuración del micrófono, ¿verdad?
No, it's in the interpretation icon. Select Spanish and then mute original audio.
Listo. Ahora
Could you
sí.
mute? No, we can hear you.
¿Listo? ¿Listo?
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Perfecto.
Sí.
Una disculpa, es que también mi mouse está fallando un poco. Bueno, voy a hacer énfasis en algunos comentarios que hizo Kelly. Como bien ella definió, pues la ciencia ciudadana implica una participación activa de la población, de personas no profesionales necesariamente, en la recolección, análisis y aplicación de datos científicos. Esta participación ciudadana, veámosla como una puerta que da acceso al público en general, a las personas, al conocimiento científico. Y bueno, estas personas pueden ser de diversas formaciones. Lo más notable de la ciencia ciudadana, yo diría que es la capacidad de fomentar una mayor participación pública en la ciencia. Entonces, se promueve un mayor interés y conciencia sobre los problemas científicos y ambientales que enfrentamos. Yo me enfoco en una de las ciudades que pues, más problemáticas de agua tiene, que es aquí en la Ciudad de México. Y bueno, actualmente pues tenemos una severa situación de sequía. Y vamos a ver cómo podemos integrar esta participación ciudadana en problemas tan relevantes y vitales como es el agua. El empoderamiento comunitario es otro aspecto fundamental en esto de la ciencia ciudadana. Al permitir que las comunidades participen activamente en investigaciones y en la toma de decisiones que están relacionadas con su entorno. En este sentido, se fortalece el sentido de pertenencia y de responsabilidad ante numerosas problemáticas. Esta participación ciudadana promueve prácticas de vida más sostenibles. Además, trabaja en colaboración científicos, expertos con la población. Y esto permite que se creen redes de conocimiento y de colaboración para abordar problemas complejos ambientales, como es el caso del agua, ¿no? En resumen, yo diría que la ciencia ciudadana es una herramienta muy poderosa que está cambiando la forma en la que hacemos ciencia, cómo nos relacionamos con el entorno y cómo nos relacionamos con la población. Al promover esta participación, este empoderamiento comunitario y un desarrollo más sostenible. Entonces, la ciencia ciudadana nos brinda la oportunidad de construir un futuro más informado, más equitativo y que sea ambientalmente más consciente, ¿no? Entonces, la que sigue, por favor.
Alma, if you can hear me,
Yes.
I believe you are in the wrong. Have you selected Spanish? People are not hearing in this. Have you selected the Spanish channel and then mute original audio?
¿Sí?
Make sure you are on Spanish. Are you on Spanish? Okay.
Sí,
he
está en
said
español.
Okay, keep going. We're good to go.
Ok. En algunas de las herramientas más poderosas que yo he encontrado para incluir la participación ciudadana son reportes que los ciudadanos hacen en torno a las problemáticas más complejas que vivimos en la ciudad, como es la escasez de agua, las fugas de agua y la mala calidad de agua. Entonces, aquí en México tenemos una herramienta muy poderosa que se llama el Portal Nacional de Transparencia, y yo le doy mucho valor a esta herramienta porque me permite tener un primer panorama de las problemáticas, de cómo se están comportando estas variables y qué dice la población. Entonces, desde luego representa diversos retos que vamos a abordar más adelante, pero solo les quiero ilustrar el valor que tiene esta herramienta aquí en este caso en investigación. Listo.
Thank you, Alma. I already have a lot of questions, but I'm not gonna do it yet. Before going to Jesus. Jesus, are you good to go?
Ok.
Ok, bueno, primero que nada agradecer por poder participar en esta charla científica acerca de la ciencia ciudadana. Y complementando a mis compañeros, pues les voy a platicar un poco sobre dos casos en los cuales a través de la ciencia ciudadana tratamos de conocer las perspectivas de cómo la sociedad en los valles agrícolas en el norte de México usan y manejan sus aguas para la productividad. El primero de ellos va a ser en un valle menonita que se ubica en una cuenca endorreica en la región noroeste del estado de Chihuahua. Y el segundo caso del cual platicaremos es de el valle agrícola Tabalao-Paldama y un potencial intercambio de agua, es decir, usar agua residual tratada para la producción agrícola y brindar a la ciudad, que en este caso es la ciudad capital del estado, la ciudad de Chihuahua, el agua subterránea, para contrarrestar los problemas que están teniendo alrededor de 90,000 habitantes en la ciudad capital. Siguiente, por favor. Al hablar de la ciencia ciudadana, nos brinca este nuevo esquema del ciclo del agua que hace algún tiempo, algunos meses atrás, aparece en nuestra literatura y en donde, a diferencia del ciclo hidrológico que ya conocíamos, en esta nos incluye a nosotros como parte de él, porque cada una de nuestras acciones modifica e influye en las dinámicas de los flujos que se tienen. Y aquí es donde la investigación participativa, la ciencia ciudadana, pues entra en este contexto. ¿Cómo nosotros, como personas, contribuimos a la generación de conocimientos y al manejo? Entonces, a través de mi participación, estaremos viendo dos ejemplos de cómo los agricultores participan en la administración y gestión del agua en sus valles agrícolas. Siguiente, por favor. Todo esto enmarcado en tres principios que forman parte de esta investigación participativa. El primero de ellos, que es el meta-knowledge, que es la parte de la información básica. El segundo es la cuestión de información fundacional, que te permite el conocer cómo aplicar esto y el replantearte las cosas, porque recordemos que parte de la ciencia participativa es aprender a desaprender para reaprender. Y finalmente, tenemos que englobar la parte humanística, que es donde nosotros empezamos a involucrar a cada uno de los actores que se involucran en nuestras investigaciones. Siguiente, por favor. Con estos ejemplos, nosotros vamos a tener de una manera conjunta cómo vamos a crear, a colaborar y a conectar todos los círculos que participan dentro de la generación de conocimiento a través de esta investigación participativa. Esa sería parte de lo que vamos a estar hablando en esta sección y con lo que complementaría a las respuestas de mis compañeros que me precedieron.
Thank you, Jesus. And I'm just gonna throw a question at you, but don't answer yet. Just keep it in the back of your mind. On the limits of citizen science, where are the limits of citizen science? Are there any limits? Just keep it in the back of your mind. And we're gonna go with the next question with Kelly. What are the challenges in its implementation on your research projects? What are the main we already addressed some of those, but from your perspective, what are those? And I'm going to start with Kelly again.
Okay, so we have a lot of issues with bacterial impairment in our waterways, many of us. And bacteria is a human pathogen, so it can cause illness. So it's something that we want to monitor, and it's also something that's controlled by from the regulatory standpoint. However, it is challenging to monitor, and it can be time consuming and also resource intensive. So it's difficult for professionals even to be able to collect enough monitoring data to cover the state. And if you were to talk about volunteer monitoring, for example, I work closely with the Texas Stream Team. They have trained over 11,000 volunteers over their 30-year career to collect water monitoring data across the state. However, a very, very small percentage of those are actually trained to collect bacteria data because it requires advanced training, which is about 8 to 16 hours. And it also requires that you take your sample to a lab and have it certified. So it's a limiting aspect of volunteer data. Not very many people were certified to collect that. So it didn't help fill any data gaps, and it wasn't actually serving its purpose for citizen science collection. So if you can move to the next slide. We created an optical brightener testing citizen science procedure that is more accessible. And this uses tampons, which are cotton on a string, as we call it. And what it does is cotton is a medium that optical brighteners are attracted to. Optical brighteners are chemicals that are found in all human wastewater because they are found in soap and detergent and toilet paper. And if you were to shine a black light on yourself right now, you would have optical brighteners attached to your clothes. They're just floating around and they shine very bright blue under a UV light. So it's a visual assessment. If you have optical brighteners in your waterway, they are supposed to be removed from the water treatment process. So if they're in your water, it probably means you have a wastewater leak. So optical brighteners are used as a proxy for bacteria and also as an early detection system for wastewater leaks. And they are a very great alternative for a citizen science project because they use low-cost alternatives to bacterial sampling by using cotton and a black light flashlight in a water bottle. So it's a much more accessible method that we invented or basically put into place for a citizen science project because of the accessibility of the materials and the fact that it allowed a more diverse group such as students and youth to participate with bacterial proxy data collection. So he can move to the next slide. We did a lot of this across the state with many different groups, youth and teachers and volunteers and Texas Stream Team. And we ended up discovering a lot of really great information, but also new challenges that arose. So if you can go to the next slide, we'll outline a few of those. For example, in order for a school district to participate in something that's new and novel, they generally need district support. So to have teachers go and do this alone can be a challenge. It was much better when they had support from their administration, which we found out along the way. Another thing, just because they're cute kids doesn't mean they can get onto a private landowner area. So we still had some problems with that. And we also had private landowners that threatened action against our students simply for being on there and taking water quality samples, even though optical brighteners are not actionable or are they regulated. Didn't matter, still caused people to get upset. Also, we were really hoping that our students could go to nearby rivers and nearby streams to collect data. That was very, very challenging. Students are very, especially post-COVID, there aren't buses, there isn't staff, and it's very difficult to get community support for them to actually leave the school. So we learned that was challenging, and we ended up coming up with a method where they take the sample back into the classroom and look at it that way. Also, turns out tampons are a problem. Tampon is a feminine hygiene product, and it turns out that under the age of high school, it is possibly illegal to say tampon in middle school. So we now call it cotton on a string. We don't use that word, tampon. And we learned that that was another challenge that we might face. And finally, we learned that in order for citizen science to actually continue beyond the scope of one project, there really needs to be ongoing, usually online support, which is why we created a hub platform through ArcGIS Online, where all of our data was immediately visualized. So for these red flag events, we could then send the municipality or water provider immediately to the site where we found a positive hit for optical brighteners so that action could be taken, so that there was a pipeline of support beyond just the data collection piece, because just data collection isn't, in my opinion, very good citizen science. It needs to be an active process, like our other guests mentioned, to where people are involved with the actual solution to the data that they're collecting. And so that was one of our big pieces, was trying to plug the data collectors in with the action and the policymakers that could make a difference. So those are some of the challenges that we ran into. Some of them are particular to youth, but others are just in general working with the community. You have to make sure that you're taking their needs into account and setting project goals that align with your community rather than having goals when you come in. Also, I believe makes a much more successful citizen science project.
Thank you, Kelly. Eric, what are the challenges? You already mentioned some of them, but
yeah, no, it's
let's skip.
I sort of classified challenges in 3 categories: sort of technicals, more the community base, and then so I guess call it methodological or epistemological, sort of more conceptual level. We are at a bit different stage of our project. We just went through the design and sort of organizing that part of the research. We developed in collaboration with UABC, University of Baja California, the Faculty of Industrial Design some prototypes to set up the basis for monitoring. And there are, again, this three. We actually are going to set up the first one next week. I need to go Monday to just check last details. But in this process, we came up across a lot of different challenges, and talking also with people who have done something similar. It's for example, and then in our case, we're just setting up a station where people pass by and take pictures, right? The idea is that you don't need to be trained or have any sort of any context of the project. You just pass by walking on the beach, you see something that brings your attention, so you just get close, read a bit the instructions, set up your phone, take a picture, and that's it, right? that's the initial idea. Now, some of the issues, I'm talking with another colleague here in the region, that when they set out their project, they were getting a lot of pictures, but you can imagine also sometimes the pictures are not, let's say, PR13. So that's a problem that you have to, how do you manage with that? So we're just developing a small bot, so we don't even get to see those pictures, right? You're bringing outside. Then sometimes people are well intended and they want to take the pictures that are they think that are needed for the project, but then they set out their camera in the wrong way, or they don't really follow the instructions to how to set up the to how to send the picture to us. You have to add a hashtag or use an app, and then so we. And this process, because the idea of our project is to continue it for another year, we are gathering that input. Say, okay, we actually need to change the instructions because people are finding it a little bit challenging. So first of all, that's the first challenge, the technical aspects. That the data sometimes is not up to standards because there's maybe a gap in how we explain them, and then we have to reconsider that. Can you go to the next slide? Then this is the communal or the community-based issues. And this is very, I think, depending on the local context. So this project, it's in Tijuana, the municipality next to the, I mean, can you go to the previous slide? Sorry, just forgot to mention that picture. So that is if you see in the middle of the picture, there's this, there's the barrier, the border between Mexico and the United States. And then the bullfighting ring there, it's Tijuana, Playas de Tijuana, the sort of the neighborhood next to the border. And we are setting up, you can't really see it in that picture, but there's a small lighthouse next to the wall. And so we are setting up our first, one of our monitoring stations right there. And then the others are a bit further to the coast. Can you go to the next one, please? So what I mean by community challenges, when we were getting the permits in the city to set up this, we went to talk with the authorities, express project, and then they were actually excited and very welcoming. But they were very concerned that the whatever we set up there wouldn't be respected. And they gave us an example because the water quality in the ocean and the beach is not up to standard. So they tried to set up some signs warning people to not get into the water. And they installed the signs at 10 in the morning, and by noon they were gone because they use wood, and people just take the wood to make a fire in the beach. So that was the first warning. That so how do we manage to make sure that people in the area see this as their own part of the element? So we start doing some focus groups, and one of the things we realize is the kind of, even the font that we use and the information has to be different, because whenever by they I mean people in the neighborhood, they see something as perceived as official from the government, they already have a negative, antagonistic, sort of rebellious relationship to that. And there's another projects next to the border that are not for gathering data, but more for sort of more artistic performance. And those projects are respected because people see it as part of the community. So whatever it feels that it's come from an official authority, the immediate reaction sometimes is to vandalize it. So we had to take that into account when we design the stations and also how we communicate. And then if you go to the last one, sort of the other group of challenges, it's more of I think the main question is we want to do this, as Kelly mentioned, because it's not just about gathering data. There's a lot of benefits and involving community and helping them, not helping them, and sort of collaborating with them to continue the project. And then one of the questions is, for example, what we were thinking ourselves is, why don't we just set up a group of volunteers who can take the pictures? And we actually, it's one of our other projects with a local high school. It's part of their classes. They get some credit to go and take a picture a day, right? It's part of one of the activities. And there's a benefit on, let's say, training someone who goes there. And then, so the question is it, should we put more weight on sort of the democratization of science, or more weight on the scientific rigor? Because ideally we can just do it ourselves, go there, take the picture, we avoid all those other issues with the standards, the quality, with the focus, everything, and we get the right data. But when we lose the capacity to engage with people that just pass by. So we didn't want to lose that, and now it's a little bit more difficult. So we have to set up a station that is attractive, that it's engaging, with the right font, so people don't think it comes from the city, so they don't vandalize it. And although we also have to make a partnership with local vendors who take care of the station. So all those things make it a little bit more difficult. But yeah, sort of the trade-offs that we do in the design stage of the project.
Thank you, Eric. And Alma and Jesus, I'm gonna have to ask you to shorten your answers as much as possible to the 3 minutes, so we have time for questions, because we have a couple of questions already here. Alma, what are the challenges that you see in the implementation of this approach on your research?
Bueno, brevemente, si bien la ciencia ciudadana nos ofrece una oportunidad invaluable para ampliar el alcance de nuestra investigación y promover una mayor participación ciudadana, pues también presenta una serie de desafíos que debemos abordar de manera proactiva y efectiva. Uno de los principales desafíos, como bien lo mencionaba Eric, pues es el control de calidad de los datos recopilados. La participación de la población puede plantear desafíos en términos de garantizar esta calidad y fiabilidad de los datos. Otro desafío importante es garantizar la equidad e inclusión en los proyectos de ciencia. Entonces, debemos procurar que sean estos proyectos más accesibles y que estén abiertos a una amplia gama de participantes. No importa su origen socioeconómico o educativo. Otra cosa es que se debe fomentar un diálogo abierto y transparente entre los científicos y la comunidad, en la población. Y bueno, por último, pues debemos asegurarnos que estos proyectos y que esta participación ciudadana se vea motivada para que se sostenga a lo largo del tiempo. Y no solo esto, también tiene que uno contar con financiamiento para que al final del día nuestro proyecto sea viable. Entonces, y bueno, ya como conclusión, esta ciencia ciudadana pues ofrece numerosas oportunidades para avanzar en nuestra comprensión del mundo que nos rodea y promover una mayor participación pública en la ciencia. Entonces, es una herramienta muy poderosa que nos ayuda a transitar hacia un desarrollo sostenible. Gracias.
Thank you, Alma. And I'm going to go with Jesus. Jesus, same question for you. What are the challenges?
Ok, bueno, continuando con los desafíos, en el caso que nosotros presentamos de los trabajos de investigación participativa en el Valle Menonita, el primero de ellos, y que debemos de mencionar, siguiente por favor, es la serie problemática que presentan la presión sobre los acuíferos, en particular en nuestro estado, en el estado de Chihuahua, en donde nosotros, siguiente por favor, podemos apreciar que gran parte de ellos se encuentran con un grado de déficit, de deterioro y presencia de algunos contaminantes. Mucho de esto ha detonado por la presión de cultivos que demandan una alta cantidad de agua, como pueden ser el algodón, el nogal y la alfalfa, que son cultivos representativos de nuestro estado, pero que también han puesto en un grado de vulnerabilidad estos ecosistemas. Siguiente, por favor. Siguiente. Y centrándonos en particular en la región donde se realizó este trabajo, que es en la cuenca Laguna de Bustillos, en el estado de Chihuahua, en la siguiente filmina ustedes pueden ver una serie de problemáticas que fueron parte de los retos que nos enfrentamos a la hora de entrar con estos proyectos. Y el reto más grande que tuvimos fue retomar comunicación y establecer canales de comunicación con las comunidades menonitas. Para empezar, ellos manejan un lenguaje diferente al nuestro. Entonces, el hacerles transmitir a ellos la problemática que ocurre en su región, donde un acuífero está sobreexplotado, donde tenemos fragmentación del ecosistema, donde tenemos problemas de contaminación por agroquímicos, problemas de deforestación, entre otros. El comunicarnos con ellos fue parte de los retos que tuvimos que hacer como esta investigación para que ellos entraran con nosotros a empezar a trabajar en estos proyectos. Siguiente, por favor. En la siguiente filmina podemos ver la región de la Cuenca Laguna de Bustillos, que es donde se realizó nuestro trabajo y fue parte de los retos que nosotros observamos. En la imagen que ustedes ven es una obra, una infraestructura que ellos trabajan de manera manual, que se le conoce como tajos y que no es otra cosa más que reservorios en donde ellos empiezan a almacenar agua, ya sea de lluvia o agua subterránea, para sostener sus actividades agrícolas. Podrán ver ustedes en la imagen que gran parte de la cuenca pues se dedica o tiene implicaciones agrícolas. Y es como nosotros tuvimos que empezar a trabajar con ellos de la mano para entender esas problemáticas y tratar de entender y de aportar soluciones en esa región. Siguiente, por favor. Asimismo, esa región cuenta con una laguna, que es conocida como Laguna de Bustillos, y donde constantemente están ingresando, pues ahora sí que sustancias que cambian la calidad del agua y que ponen un potencial riesgo para el ecosistema. Entonces, tuvimos que empezar a trabajar con ellos desde darles a conocer qué es la calidad del agua, cómo ellos pueden empezar a monitorear, qué hay de la sobreexplotación de pozos, cómo pueden monitorear sus pozos y sobre todo desarrollar metodologías que en la siguiente pregunta trataremos de dar respuesta. Siguiente, por favor. Uno de los grandes retos que tuvimos también con ellos fue la sequía, que es algo recurrente, es una cosa que ocurre de manera frecuente y que pues de los años del 2020 a la fecha, pues esta ha venido a mermar la actividad agrícola y sobre todo pues a incrementar estos retos para entrar con ellos a su trabajo. Siguiente, por favor. Y es como nosotros, contextualizando todo esto, pues fueron los retos que nos enfrentamos, la comunicación, cómo establecer la comunicación con ellos. Y lo que tuvimos que hacer es entrar con ellos a la comunidad, que nos vieran como parte de su grupo y empezar a trabajar en conjunto, principalmente en el manejo del agua en la agricultura. No sé si me queda tiempo por ahí para hablar de los retos del siguiente caso de estudio o continuamos con la siguiente pregunta.
Ah,
Sí. Ok,
bueno,
ok, perfecto.
30 seconds.
El segundo caso de estudio, los retos que tuvimos para empezar a plantear una unidad de riego colectivo en el intercambio de aguas residuales tratadas con el agua subterránea, es que teníamos que trabajar con los agricultores, entrar a sus campos, andar junto con ellos, entender la problemática y sobre todo darles a conocer información que se genera a través de los estudios técnicos, pero que para ellos a veces es difícil entender. Y es darles a conocer que 3 de los principales acuíferos que abastecen la ciudad de Chihuahua presentan un grado de déficit y darles a conocer a ellos qué significa el déficit, qué significa muchos de los problemas que se quedan en la parte técnica y que a veces la comunicación, hago mucho hincapié en eso, es parte de lo que tuvimos que trabajar con ellos, siguiente, y fue parte de los retos. El segundo reto que nos enfrentamos con ellos es darles a conocer qué es el agua residual tratada, cuál es la diferencia del agua residual tratada al agua residual y cómo se ha utilizado alrededor del mundo en otros países, en otros ejemplos, y las potenciales bondades y riesgos que pudieran presentarse en el corto, mediano y largo plazo. Y pues fue parte de los retos que tuvimos en ambos estudios. Más adelante les platicaré un poco de las dinámicas que nosotros estamos implementando y se implementaron para contrarrestar estas problemáticas.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm gonna go with the last one, the benefits to the society as a whole for participating. And I would add, just not participating on these projects, but even if you do not participate in these projects, what are the benefits that the society gets from this addition to the scientific method, if you want to call it that way? Oh, and I'm going to start with you, Kelly, if that's okay, again.
Sure. So on the last part, I mentioned how we created a hub, which is like an online platform for basically data collection and feedback, to where what we are producing on behalf of the project can be shared with the public, and then what the public is collecting on behalf of the project can be shared with us. So it's this feedback loop. And I feel like this is an example of the benefits of citizen science to society, in part, is the fact that this is transparency, accessibility. This isn't water quality data being maintained behind a paywall or some kind of research that's siloed and, removed from the rest of us. This is a publicly accessible forum where feedback is interactive. We're not just telling, we are actually sharing and co-collecting data and collaborating on this project. And I feel like in the long run, that's how citizen science not only benefits citizens, but also science. Because any science that is not aligned with the needs of the community is not good science. We have got to be able to create scientific projects and research that are aligned with the needs of the people who we are working with to help. And so I feel like science that is more and more removed from the community is less and less useful. So we can move to the next slide. For example, I don't love social media, but we went and did a whole lot of social media where we were using student voices and videos and content to be able to share about our work. And we were able to, for example, show that the bacteria content under a bridge was not from bats, but in fact from septics, because we were able to find optical brighteners there. That was a really unifying message for this community who really loved their bats, and they were able to spread the word, and we ended up with a lot more interest in this. And also the bats don't have to leave, and the people whose septic was leaking are now fixing the problem. And so if without that community input and that alignment with the community goals, we wouldn't have had that success. So you can go to the next slide.
Do you want me to play the video? Do you want me to play the video? Because I think we can.
Okay, yeah, it's only 1 minute.
You should be able to hear it. Okay.
So yeah, we created that in part because we wanted to promote what we were doing, but also because we have another challenge where we are having students create a 1-minute video about an environmental issue for a chance to win $10,000. So we were modeling how to create a 1-minute video so that the students would also join in. So our ideas behind the citizen science and this community involvement, like I said, was to help the science itself align with community needs, but also we wanted to have more measurable impacts for our education, which is a side benefit of citizen science that I'm not sure many people have contemplated. But if you're trying to show a funding agency that the work that you're doing, the education that you're doing, the outreach that you're doing is working, citizen science, by definition, quite often tracks those impacts for you because it will track numbers reached. And like what Eric is doing with the coastal, there's that snapshot piece does show change over time. It also shows involvement at multiple locations. And then you can get information about the people that participated in your project. And so that is a way to track impacts, which can be very challenging to do for education programs in general. So you can actually utilize the citizen science data to show more need, more involvement, and hopefully generate more funding for your project in the future, which is what we've been able to do with some of these metrics. So that's a whole other conversation, but I really do think citizen science can also help us not only strengthen the science and strengthen the participation, but also strengthen our need for continued community involvement. Show funders why this is so important and why they should invest money in outreach as well as research. And I think that's oh yeah, one more slide. And we have these are all citizen science related projects that you can check out if you're interested. You can continue to follow us on social media, or you can follow us on social media to see what else we are putting out. And then we are also working with more ways to amplify youth voices through citizen science, because that tool of empowering youth, I think, is incredibly crucial, not only for the next generation, but also for careers that we're really trying to show these students what it means to actually be involved with water management in a real impactful and hands-on way. And so that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. That was very delightful. And I do have a couple of questions, but I want first you guys to finish and wrap up with this last question. What are the benefits? I mean, apart from what Kelly said, which I think it's basically science and community get married finally, right? Do things together for the good of society anyways, because that's what science is for. By definition, should help and serve a society need. But sometimes we forget about that. So anyway, it's going back to those basics. Eric, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, I think I feel very in line to what Kelly was mentioning. It's very close to our experience. There are some, let's say, technical benefits if you want to see of the process itself. Obviously, there's a social and communities benefits of having everyone involved. But if it's done properly, for instance, in our case, yeah, we can actually gather a lot of data. Our first idea when we were drafting this project was to only use volunteers from a high school. And then, I mean, in the best case scenario, we are probably recruiting about 20 students who are constantly helping us maybe 1 or twice a week. But we're with the new projection, and we're opening it to everyone in the community. We are aiming to have that many inputs per day, because there's again, if done properly, you can increase a lot the input of data that you get. Obviously, there are some challenges that we discussed before, but you can actually increase your capabilities. There's also, yeah, it's a cost smart way to do things. You can instead of yeah, maybe hiring someone who is doing it constantly. So you're trying to be more practical, obviously without getting into the considerations of how it's positive for the community. By itself, the methods are are helpful. There's a small picture here with the students, again, because we start working with them last year, designing, that was the first prototypes that they were doing. They actually used those for a local work here and design, which is it's been interesting working with students because they also understand they had the point of design in mind. So I think what Kelly was saying, and also you, Rosario, the idea that if we are and the farther we are from the actual community, the less likely is that whatever we're trying to do that is going to have an impact. So the students actually go there, they talk to people, they gather input why something would work or wouldn't, and then come back and work in the lab. Can you go to the next one, please? So yeah, in the picture you see the first prototypes again. Actually, the small one, it's the one we are installing in the coming weeks next to the border, which is a bit of a wall. And the thin of the wall, I mean, that is obviously a scale. The final product is going to be about 6'5" feet. It's like 190 meters, and it's made out of recycled plastic. And then sort of in the fin, you put the phone aligned to the coast. So obviously there's a lot of benefits doing it this way because, for instance, we talked to a local vendor which has a very popular coconuts stand here, and they also sell fruit. And this lady knows everyone from the community, and everyone who passed by. And she's always very happy to be involved. So getting her blessing in a way was very important, because then yeah, she's telling everyone to respect that whale because it's part of the project. So that making those sort of connections and collaborations with that are informal, but it's difficult to put that in a, if you're aiming to publish a paper on this, how do you measure the impact of having a local vendor taking care of your installation, right? That's it's there, but it's less informal. You have to really be there and talk to people. And there's some sort of pride in people that are there on having, like, oh, we have this project here, and we are gathering data for something bigger. So can you go to the last one, please? And well, actually, those are the three final products that the prototypes. The one on the left is the whale that is going to be the largest one, and the ones on the right are smaller, is about 1 feet. We are installing them actually next week. They have a whole sort of meaning behind that. I think I forgot exactly the name of the one on the bottom. Is supposed to be a son from a local native group here. I forgot the name exactly, but it's that is made of aluminum to try to resist the erosion, and the one on top, can't really see it in the picture, but has a fish, so you could put it in different positions to set up the phone in the right place. That also comes with certain information for the people in the neighborhood. And as I said before, there is some sense of pride in people that are, once you explain like this, once you take their input into consideration, once you ask them questions, why do you like this? Why wouldn't you like this? I think also it's a sense of you're being respectful, and then they appreciate that. So there's a sense of, I'm part of this, instead of I'm just like this foreign researcher who just goes and set up here shop, right? So that has a lot of benefits that are difficult to measure and are a bit more intangible. But as Kelly was saying, in terms of future, the future of writing for grants or reporting resource impact, it's also very it's easier to measure those things. I think that's for me.
Thank you, Eric. Alma, your final question on the benefits and your final thoughts on this topic.
think she may be muted.
Alma, you're muted. Alma, you're muted. You're muted.
No, no doy una oye, qué barbaridad, perdón. Entonces, bueno, sin duda, lo de la participación ciudadana
You're
pues,
fine.
nos trae numerosos beneficios. Uno de los beneficios más significativos es la capacidad de involucrar a las comunidades en el monitoreo y en la conservación del medio ambiente. Al participar en estos proyectos, las comunidades se vuelven defensoras de su entorno local, contribuyen directamente a la protección de los recursos, a la protección del ambiente, de los ecosistemas en general, y fortalece los esfuerzos de conservación al proporcionar una red de vigilancia ambiental amplia. Además, hay que considerar que esta participación ciudadana involucrada en proyectos científicos fomenta la educación y la conciencia ambiental. En este caso, por ejemplo, del uso del agua. Nosotros esperamos que más adelante podamos desarrollar un proyecto en el que generemos una herramienta que involucre esta participación ciudadana integrando datos de fugas de agua, de mala calidad, de desabasto de agua, y hacer estos datos una herramienta que empodere a la población para que participen en esta conservación del recurso y participen también en la gestión del agua, que últimamente es tema aquí en la Ciudad de México. Inspira también a las comunidades a buscar soluciones innovadoras y a colaborar en la implementación de medidas de conservación. Una vez que tú involucras a las comunidades en tu investigación, las haces parte de ella y ellas a la vez adoptan una responsabilidad, toman un sentido de pertenencia. También, se impulsan avances significativos en la investigación y sin duda ampliamos nuestra capacidad de recopilación de datos, porque también lo que tiene que decir la ciudadanía, pues al final del día se convierten en datos. En resumen, puedo decir que la ciencia ciudadana es una herramienta que impulsa la investigación científica, promueve la conservación de los recursos, promueve la educación, promueve el empoderamiento comunitario y la formulación de políticas ambientales que están basadas en evidencias. Entonces, al trabajar juntos en proyectos de ciencia ciudadana, realmente podemos marcar una diferencia real de protección y preservación de nuestro planeta y de todos nuestros recursos. Entonces, en el caso del agua, pues sí he encontrado numerosos retos porque vivimos en una ciudad muy amplia, muy grande, somos demasiados. Sin embargo, a través de esta herramienta, el portal de transparencia, podemos obtener datos relevantes que involucran a las comunidades. ¿En qué? En temas de desabasto y de mala calidad de agua. Y también en el sistema, de manera indirecta, en el sistema de distribución del agua, monitoreando fugas a través de los reportes que hace la población, que los tomamos como vigilantes del desperdicio de este recurso. Entonces, yo dejaría ahí mi participación. Gracias.
Thank you, Alma. Jesús, you're gonna wrap up.
Muy bien. Bueno, pues cerramos con lo que nosotros encontramos con estos proyectos y fue el establecer canales de comunicación y de los cuales
There's a dog. I'm sorry, there's a dog somewhere. If any of you has a dog somewhere, you can mute yourself. So
Oh.
it's
Okay.
part of the citizen science community, right? Go ahead, Jesus. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just want to take care of that
No
dog.
worries. No worries. Ok, bueno, ¿qué encontramos nosotros al involucrarnos en estos proyectos en el Valle de Cuauhtémoc? Generamos mucho material divulgativo en colaboración con otras instituciones, tanto académicas como no gubernamentales. Para subsanar la parte de calidad del agua, se establecieron humedales construidos en los cuales gran parte de lo que se desarrolló para que estos se llevaran a cabo fue con ayuda de los locales, es decir, tanto agricultores como estudiantes y como el público en general de la región nos ayudó a la colecta de plantas, al establecimiento de los humedales construidos, a los monitoreos de la calidad del agua. Se les repartieron equipos para que ellos nos apoyaran a estar monitoreando cómo se manejaba esa calidad y que el agua que ellos obtenían de una mejor calidad pudiera ser reutilizada en sus actividades agrícolas. Otra de las acciones que establecimos ahí fue un jardín etnobotánico en el cual recolectamos plantas endémicas de la región y las pusimos a disposición del público, dándole a conocer todos los beneficios, tanto medicinales y de otros usos que puedan implementarse. En este lugar se estableció la primera fase de un centro de agua, en el cual lo que se busca es tener módulos demostrativos en los cuales las personas vayan, conozcan y aprendan sobre el manejo y el uso del agua con un enfoque en la agricultura, ya que es un valle agrícola. Siguiente, por favor. Otras de las, aquí vemos unas imágenes de las personas que se involucraron. Si se fijan, establecimos laboratorios dentro de las áreas, con ellos en parques, en jardines, en donde se tomaban las muestras y con equipos, ellos empezaban a ver cómo se comportaban los parámetros. Son algunas de las fotografías en donde se involucraron actores gubernamentales y de otras instituciones en la implementación de este jardín etnobotánico que vale la pena mencionar. Es un islote que está dentro de una laguna, allá adentro. Se hicieron talleres participativos para conocer cuáles eran las problemáticas que se tenían, cómo percibían ellos el agua, cómo percibían el suelo, cómo percibían sus recursos. En esto se involucraron comunidades menonitas, porque en esta región en particular convergen tres culturas: la cultura mestiza, la cultura menonita y pueblos originarios, que en nuestro caso tenemos tarumaras. Entonces ellos empezaron a involucrarse en cómo podemos generar información y que esto derive en una política pública para el buen uso de los recursos en la agricultura. Siguiente, por favor. Asimismo, levantamos encuestas que nos permitieron conocer cuáles eran sus problemáticas, cómo ellos manejaban toda la cuestión de agroquímicos, cómo manejaban sus cultivos, para poder darles una recomendación. Si bien el trabajo se dice fácil, siempre es un reto establecer esos canales y sobre todo que los agricultores te den su tiempo para atenderte, porque son personas que, a diferencia de otros actores, ellos, su ritmo de trabajo es muy diferente y muy acelerado, ya que ellos dependen de estar ahí día a día en parcelas, en huertas, atendiendo sus cultivos, y que te dediquen tiempo se vuelve complejo. Entonces, tuvimos que establecer esos mecanismos y sobre todo la información, tener el nivel para que esto fluyera y se estableciera. Asimismo, para el intercambio de aguas residuales tratadas se generó información que les dio a conocer los beneficios que se tienen. Se hizo un estudio de análisis costo-beneficio para conocer los pros y contras, y al final establecimos este sistema de economía circular en donde englobamos del agua que sale de la planta de agua residual tratada, cómo entran los cultivos, cómo esos cultivos posteriormente entran a la cadena alimenticia, llegando hasta nuestros hogares, y es algo que se repite a través del tiempo y fue parte de los beneficios que nosotros encontramos al generar esta información a través de la ciencia participativa.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesus. With that, I'm going to go with some of the comments or questions that we have here. If you can just be very quick on your responses. ¿Cuánto tiempo se tarda el proceso? Okay, so this is in Spanish. Saida, I'm going to do this in Spanish, or I can do it in English and you can translate. Can you recommend some training techniques or guidance to give to give to the citizens to take water quality data? And how long is this process? And then I think that was for Kelly, probably. And then Gilbert, I know this is for Kelly. Cotton on a string, very innovative. Have you done any correlation with bacteria tests yet? And then for Eric, I'm gonna give them all and then you can start. Hopefully you remember. For Eric, what was the proportion of photographs that were not helpful in relationship with those that were? And what do you consider is the key for a good relation between citizen science and implementation of public policy? I think those are very good questions. Who wants to start? We don't have that much time. We have 11 minutes, I think. So, Kelly, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm gonna drop a link in the chat, and this is a link to the Texas Stream Team's it shows their QAPP, or their Quality Assurance Project Plan. So they're under a quality assurance plan with the Texas Commission for Environmental Quality, TCEQ. And this is the highest level I've ever seen for quality control for citizen collected data. So this is a very strict procedure for water quality collection that makes it kind of almost official. So if you want to go all the way to that level, this is that kind of document that you can dig into. And then from there, you can go step it down to whatever fits the data quality for your purposes. So really, it just needs to be fit for purpose, which is, for our instance, it's a presence absence for the optical brighteners. And that was one of the reasons, because it's more accessible. But if you wanted to do really high quality data quality water quality monitoring, this is a plan to follow. And then as far as bacterial correlations, yes, we have. And so far, they work well for fresh and salt water, as far as optical brighteners being a proxy for bacteria. So far, so good. So fingers crossed that this works in multiple regions, but where we've tested it so far, it does.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Eric?
Yeah, well, we are still the stage of beta, so we are taking only pictures with people who are aware of the project. We haven't opened it up to everyone in the community. What I was mentioning is other similar projects along the coast, but one's in Ensenada, which is about 60 kilometers south of Tijuana, and then in La Jolla and in San Diego. And in those cases, I think there were two kind of challenges in terms of pictures. One is that they're just not right in the right direction, and it's very minimal. It's maybe less than 5% of pictures that are just out of focus, or most people, because the way you develop, you set up the stand, it's just you just put the phone there, so there's not much room for mistakes. And then with the other, that kind of people just putting pictures that are nothing to do with that, it's just also one or two. Like the usual suspects. So once you realize that it's going to be that, you just sort of ban it from the start. So it's not that so far big of a deal, but it's there. You have to be aware of that.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. And before wrapping up, I just want to wrap up and just, go back to what we have seen today and try to define what it is and what we're seeing right now. And it takes me back to that topic of the gap between policy and science, right? And how that gap still exists, and where does citizen science actually fits in that space, which is basically the community. The challenges that we're facing today requires everyone's input, not just, it's not enough for scientists, definitely it's not. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. And it's not enough just, directions by the government itself or institutions. We need the community, not just for, get them involved into the process of producing science, but also to take responsibility. And the awareness, and I have those words. You've mentioned all over your presentations, the sustainability part of the project, but also the science and also the benefits of those projects needs to be sustainable over time. And the only way to do that is getting the community involved. Adaptability to the needs of the community. the communication, which Jesus emphasized that a couple of times. I mean, that's the key, basically. The communication between science, or the gap between science and policy, relies on that communication with the community, because that's where the policy actually builds up for the communication with the community. The sense of responsibility, which I already mentioned, the transparency of that data and the usefulness of that data, not just to keep it there on scientific publications, but actually applicable. I mean, I guess that's the word. This needs to be applicable, understandable, and transparent. And how to communicate all that knowledge in a language that everybody understands, which is another challenge for the scientific community, which I think it's evolving towards that. And it has to evolve towards that. The empowerment, right? So yes, we do have problems, we do have environmental problems, but we all have to do something, right? And we all have to understand what the problem is in order to, do something about it, and not wait for just the science to tell us what's the problem, and then the policymakers to tell us what to do. But how do I, me as a citizen, how am I responsible of it? How I can get affected by it, and what changes I can actually make, being youth, being a farmer, being anyone, right? Because everyone is affected at the end of the day. So I guess that's the only way to be sustainable, to get all the sectors actually involved in the problem, because we are all part of the problem. So we all have to be part of the solution in any way. So I think just final thoughts pretty quickly, 10 seconds, final thoughts. Alma, I'm gonna start with you. A line of wisdom. Just unmute yourself. Okay. No, you don't have last line of wisdom. Okay.
Pues yo creo que la ciencia ciudadana nos deja mucho, nos deja muchas enseñanzas, nos deja muchos retos. Sin embargo, esta vinculación política, academia y sociedad, ese es el puente que nos deja esta ciencia ciudadana. Esta comunicación transdisciplinaria para resolver problemas complejos. Con eso me quedo.
Thank you, Alma. Jesus, your final line of wisdom.
Ok, la ciencia ciudadana sin duda es un área de oportunidad para reaprender lo que ya hemos conocido, hacer desde un punto de vista de la sociedad hacia nosotros, hacia la ciencia.
Love that. Eric? Truly, truly a line of wisdom.
I think also another aspect is that it forces you to step out of the sort of ivory tower, and you might develop some ideas in the abstract, but once you're there, and then you just realize it's not practical. So I think that's a very also a positive aspect, that it forces you as a researcher to interact with the community in a different way.
Thank you. And Kelly, line of wisdom.
Yes, I would say that what I've learned in my work is that everybody is an expert on something. And that expertise is something that we can benefit from. And like, nobody knows their land like that landowner. And if this is what we're working with, then these are the people we need to talk to.
That's great. That is great. And with that, I thank you for the people to stay over the hour and a half for the event. I think it was very, very useful. Thank you for those following us on YouTube. We're going to post these videos, English and Spanish, in the forum as usual. Thank you to our volunteers. Thank you, Jerry. I see you're taking notes. Thank you to our panelists today for making this very worth it. And of course, please remember to donate to the forum. And we're gonna be here, of course, in a month or so with a coffee break, which is Turnabout Coffee Break now. And keep in touch. We'll certainly be in touch. Thank you to our citizen scientists today. We all are citizens.
Gracias.
Gracias. Gracias a todos. Thank you, Zaira, as well. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah.